Hello, you're watching Dukascopy Bank Sentiment Index, where we discuss how 30 academic experts view the 6-month and 3-year prospects for Asia-Pacific, North America, and of course, Europe. This month, we're collaborating with Professor Hendrik Berg from Nebraska University in the US, who will give us his interpretations of the results for May. Professor Berg, thanks for participating. We always start by looking at how the mood indicator changed. So let's see what is different about the 6-month and 3-year global economic expectations compared to April. When we observe the sentiment for Europe, North America, and Asia Pacific, it becomes evident that both short and long-term outlooks have plummeted only for Asia Pacific to 0.73 and 0.78, respectively. Professor, what do you think were the main reasons for the drop?
I think what we're seeing in part is the fact that the sentiment was very positive in Asia, and it was very pessimistic, certainly for Europe. So what we're seeing here, when we see how the sentiment changes, I think some of the very recent news on Asia, perhaps the slowing of growth in China, the still very much in doubt outcome of Japan's policy changes. I wouldn't say that mood indicator shows that people have become overly pessimistic about Asia, but merely perhaps a bit more realistic.
The economic development stages are also relevant in order to understand the future prospects of key economies. So what did the poll say about Europe's business cycle? Based on the results of the survey, 14 respondents believe that the European economy is in a recession, and exactly the same number of academic experts believe the economy will begin to expand 3 years from now. Professor, what do you think will be achieved during these 3 years? Firstly, in terms of stimulative actions to support the economy, and secondly, in terms of preemptive measures in order to ensure the same conditions that have led to the most recent recession will be safely avoided in the future.
In the case of Europe, again, I think there is a very significant reassessment of some of the strong austerity policies that were put in place. Not that we're seeing major movements in the policies, but I think certainly a reassessment at this point. I personally think that's appropriate. I think the austerity measures were a tremendous problem for the European economy and did more harm than good. I'm not one of these believers that think economies have to suffer in order to necessarily improve. What improves an economy is better policies. And those better policies would be certainly, dealing with some of the debt issues, but at the same time, some of these extreme austerity measures are probably not advisable.
Having gathered data over the course of 5 months, from January to May, we're able to analyze how the short and long-term expectations have been evolving. And based on the findings, it becomes apparent that the 3-year prospects are considerably more volatile than the 6-month ones. Professor, what's your explanation behind the instability of the long-term expectations in comparison to the short-term? Shouldn't the events and data releases have a more significant impact on the 6-month outlook rather than the 3-year outlook?
Well, that's a very good question. By and large, the short-term outlook should be related to the long-term output. I mean, these are not two separate things. Yes, I think you're correct in that there's some good reasons to believe that the short-term volatility, people would expect that to be greater than in the long run. On the other hand, I think there is a feeling that a tremendous feeling of uncertainty about the long run. We are in an extremely interesting world right now where, despite the globalization, we're seeing different regions performing quite differently. We're seeing policies very different in different regions. U.S. economic policy is very different from Europe's. Japan has now shifted its policies, and of course you have, the BRICS with, again, very different policies. And so there is a tremendous potential as these different regions grow at different rates. Some of these policies work, some of these policies don't work, and there's no reason to believe that some policies are more likely than others to work. We're in this uncertain situation about the future, And I think that's what's driving this, is this feeling that over the next few months we'll just kind of plug along and we'll have a bit more of the same. But in the long run, I think there's a very, very high degree of uncertainty.
Thank you, Professor van der Berg, for your contribution. And our viewers, this is just a sneak peek of the results for May. You can read the full report by going to Dukascopy.com, selecting the Market Research section, and clicking on Sentiment Index. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye.